All right, it's time for our final presentation. Celebrated at More Than Fanny Pack again, by the way. That again?
Oh,
It's there in the spirit of it.
All right, we're doing the Panama Papers. Pay attention, there will be Jeopardy later.
all right, so we're gonna talk about introduction of the Panama Papers, a history of offshore finance, some legal issues, and lastly, lessons learned. So the Panama Papers is like a massive leak of 11.5 million documents from the Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca. It's 2.6 gigabytes of data, making it the biggest data leak in history. Terabytes. I know you're laughing, Matt. Okay, here's a breakdown of the Panama Papers. So you got 1.7 gigabytes of WikiLeaks and then 260 gigabytes of offshore secrets. I guess you guys probably don't care that much, but it just shows that 260 gigabytes the most in the offshore secrets. So I didn't really do research into it, but I just thought how big that was. It's kind of crazy. But yeah. And what did the Panama paper tell us? It basically told us how the wealthy individuals use offshore companies to basically hide assets, evade taxes, and launder money. So where did it happen? Here are some of the tax havens: Panama, the British Virgin Islands, the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Cyprus, and the Bahamas. Over 200 countries were involved with the leak. And here's like a magnitude of how involved they were. So British Virgin Islands was the most involved, got Bahamas, Panama. They also put some of their money accounts, offshore accounts in Africa and Oceania. So who was involved? It was the main law firm was Mossack Fonseca. It was the fourth largest provider of offshore services. They provided services to over 300,000 companies. And the services included incorporating and administrating companies in offshore jurisdictions, which is basically opening offshore accounts and then charging them yearly fees, wealth management and asset protection services, which is basically not hiding, I guess, keeping their wealth and also protecting their assets against like legal issues. And then lastly, real estate and property management. They will help rich individuals buy property secretly, which is kind of cool. And then they did not work directly with the individuals. They worked with accountants, lawyers, and the bankers. And then also here's some world leaders and politicians that were involved. So we got Vladimir Putin. He supposedly hid around estimate of $2 billion. He used part of that money to fund his daughter's wedding. Then we got Nawaz Sharif from Pakistan. When the news came out, he was disqualified from office. Then we got David Cameron, Petro Poroshenko. They both were used it for tax evasion. And Sigmund Davio Gunnarsson resigned after the news. And the last guy is from Egypt. He also used it. So yeah. So here are some celebrities that were involved. We got Emma Watson, super innocent, you know, we never thought she would commit any fraud. And then Jackie Chan.
Why?
And and Jackie Chan, my hero. I didn't think he would do it either. Lionel Messi, the GOAT. I guess even the best of us fall. And then Simon Cowell. I guess if all the people we think commit fraud, he would be pretty under the list. So but yeah. So when that happened, so the fraud, I guess, spanned from 1970 to 2016, from when Fonseca began creating offshore services. And then in 2014, Bastien Obermeyer, this guy received an anonymous tip. He works with the SC journalism, and then they shared it with the International Consortium of Investigate Journalists, and in 2016, they released it public to the world. So why did it happen? Basically, shell companies and offshore accounts, which are legal tools, but it's often used for tax minimization. However, it's frequently abused by wealthy individuals who use these services to avoid taxes, hide corrupt payments, or protect their assets during lawsuits and investigations. And then offshore finance centers have strong secrecy laws, making them more attractive to wealthy individuals looking to conceal their financial activities from tax authorities, regulators, or the public. So some results is the global investigations, world leaders' resignations, increased regulations and transparencies, protests by the public, exposing the illegal activities.
So next I'm going to be doing the history of offshore finances. So obviously, like many things, the offshore finances were created to avoid heavy taxation, and historians can argue that the concept of like offshore finances started in Rome when they would move around assets to avoid heavy Roman tax laws, and then with the shift to Venetian time and maritime power, merchants would levy their goods and sell in areas that had lower taxes to bolster their wealth. And then in the 20th century, the idea of modern tax havens began to form. Small nations in Europe, such as Switzerland, became popular for their political neutrality and their promise of privacy, and being wary of domestic instability and high taxes. Switzerland became a haven for those wishing to keep their financial dealings private. Decades later, the Bahamas became a similar destination for individuals and corporations wishing to hide domestic wealth from domestic tax laws. And wanting to capitalize on foreigners doing this, the Bahamas made their tax laws very lenient to foreigners wishing to hide their wealth. After World War II, there came a time in globalization and tax havens flourished in this period of time. Smaller countries made their economies more desirable, so people would want to come and like spend their money there. For example, the Cayman Islands adopted laws in the 1960s, making global offshore banking hub and made it unimpeded by direct taxation alone. And shell companies began to rise to prominence in the mid 1900s. So those are companies that exist completely on paper and don't have any actual business dealings. And they provide corporate anonymity, tax neutrality, and streamlining their corporation process. And then in 2000, OCID was formed, or the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and it was initiated to combat harmful tax practices, marking one of the early concerted efforts to pierce the veil on opaque havens. And at the same time as this organization was trying to fight offshore finances, they began to flourish even before the whole downfall.
Right. So are offshore accounts always illegal? No. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So earlier Tyler talked about like some of the more prominent names, but a fuller scope of what had happened. There were like 3 former heads of states, 5 former prime ministers, 61 different family members of prime ministers, kings, and presidents. There were officials from over 40 countries present, and over 500 banks around the world had registered nearly 15,600 shell companies. So this was huge, and it was worldwide, and everybody was just hiding all their money from everybody else. So Mossack Fonseca, they were the hub of it. They created a lot of shell companies for illegal activities, fraud, tax evasion, and also the evasion of international sanctions, just so people in sanctioned countries could get their money out and buy stuff people wouldn't know. Jurgen Mossack and Ramon Fonseca, they were issued an international arrest warrant in October of 2020. This was 4 years after the leaks, on charges of accessory to tax evasion and forming a criminal organization. However, in 2024, all former Mossack Fonseca employees, including Jurgen and Ramon, they were acquitted of all charges due to insufficient evidence, and the judge found issues with the chain of custody. So it was technical reasons more than anything. The main thing that they were doing was they were laundering money. Mossack Fonseca had many shell companies that their clients would use to, like I said, funnel money out of their country, maybe if they were sanctioned. And what they usually do is they put it into foreign real estate transactions. There were whole communities in Florida where all of the houses were just bought and owned by foreign investors They weren't living there. They would just bought the house because the house is a pretty stable investment. And then whenever they needed the money, they'd sell the house, use the money for whatever they needed, and then put whatever they had left into more houses. So they weren't living there. They might have been renting it out, but not really. It was basically just huge empty houses owned by foreign people because it's like, hey, we're gonna put our money here. It's gonna be safe. And the states, they know about this, but they can't really do a whole lot about it because, like I said, oftentimes a lot of the houses in the communities are owned by the foreign investors. So if you just get rid of foreign investors, well, all of a sudden you don't have nearly as much money coming into the local state governments as you did. So they're not happy about it, but they live with it. 2.6 terabytes of emails leaked because Mossack Fonseca, they just didn't encrypt their emails. They're sending them over plain text. They were using a 3-year-old PHP content management system. If you don't know what PHP is, it's basically a coding language that forms the foundation of the internet. Pretty much every website you ever used has some PHP in it. They were using an old PHP, or I think we're on like PHP 8-ish right now. They were using an old PHP that was outdated. They knew there were vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities hadn't been patched. They just moved on to the next PHP version. They didn't segment their client databases from their email and web services at all. So if you got into one, you had access to all the others. And their content management system, it was vulnerable to SQL injection. And their client login portal had 4 different quote unquote government grade remote access Trojans on it. Now, generally speaking, if something is government grade, that means it's made by the lowest bidder and is made of the cheapest materials possible. When you're talking about cybersecurity stuff, government grade, actually good. So in this case, it is a problem. There were 2 journalists who were killed as a result of their investigations into the Panama Papers. The first one was Daphne Caruana Galizia. She started investigating the Maltesian minister Konrad Mitsi's offshore accounts in February of 2016. This is before the leak. His chief of staff, Keith Schembri, also had offshore accounts. The papers leaked. Both politicians were confirmed to be heavily involved in Mossack Fonseca. The accounts were not legal. So in 2017, Ms. Litzia accused Prime Minister Joseph Muscat's wife of also having offshore accounts. October of 2017, she was killed via car bombing, which is a pretty extreme way to assassinate your political opponents. In November of 2019, Jorgen Fennick, who was also indicated in the papers, was indicted for the bombing. There were riots in Malta as a whole big deal. After Prime Minister Muscat said he was considering pardoning the middlemen in the murders, everybody in Malta rioted. It was a big demonstration, big protest. Schembri and Mitzi, they resigned in November of 2019, and they were immediately arrested. But Schembri was released 2 days later on November 28th. The other guy who died was Jan Kuciak. He was a Slovakian journalist investigating Marian Kochner's suspicious real estate activities. Kochner was a Slovakian real estate developer who was kind of shady. It got to the point where Kochner threatened Kuciak over the phone, and in February 2018, Kuciak and his wife were found shot dead in their home. No signs of a struggle, none of that stuff. It was a contract killing. Several Italians in the country were arrested and extradited. Kuciak's murder, it was determined to be a contract killing as a result of his journalism, and Kochner was involved with Mossack Fonseca. And in September, 3 Slovakians were arrested, and they had confirmed Kochner was the one who had ordered the contract killing because of Kuciak's investigative journalism. It is horrible. So again, like I mentioned earlier, not all offshore accounts are illegal. If you work in like a risky industry, like a doctor, a lawyer, accountant, whatever, if you're in an industry prone to litigation, you might want to put your assets in an offshore account so that it's harder for people to go after them. If you are a company, you operate in a bunch of different countries, you might want to open a bank in Switzerland or whatever, so you can better facilitate transactions with your Swiss customers. Or if you live in a politically unstable country, sure, you might as well put change your USD into euro so you can kind of hedge your bets where the USD is eventually going to collapse. There are ways and means to properly declare and disclose, hey, I have these accounts over here, this is where my assets are, so on and so forth. If you do that, you're generally in the clear. The issue arises whenever you just don't tell people you have these accounts. That's gonna create a lot of problems. Yeah, whatever you use the accounts to describe that is the line between what a legal account is and an illegal account is, it's pretty thin, it's pretty blurry. But like I said, if you go through all the proper channels, you follow all the proper laws, you're generally good. If you're using shell companies to set these up, or using shell companies to funnel your wealth into these accounts, that's going to cause problems. That's when it gets illegal. You might use nominee directors, false transactions, all that good stuff to sort of circumvent legal frameworks that are in place. The reason these are still around is largely due to lobbying. Lobbying is the act of legally bribing your politicians to pass laws and reforms that are beneficial to you, the lobbyist. In this context, most of them want the preservation and expansion of benefits for the wealthy and affluent that easier facilitates this. We saw this with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017. Lobbying may also occur through massive contributions to election campaigns and super PACs, and there were the papers showed that there were so many instances of people using these shell companies to anonymously funnel money into political action committees and political campaigns on both sides. So it wasn't just the right doing it, or it wasn't just the left doing it. But generally speaking, if whoever I want to vote for is getting money, I want to know where it's coming from so that I know they're clean. This was the total antithesis of that. Strategic partnerships are partnerships that are formed between wealthy, affluent individuals and politicians, so that the wealthy individuals help the politicians out, politicians get what they want, and then they help out the rich and affluent. We saw this recently with the Department of Governmental Efficiency and how that was run. The papers, they found, again, many instances where strategic partnerships had either directly facilitated or made it a little easier for countries to pass tax laws that would make it easier for people to put their money into these offshore accounts. The governments knew about this. At best, they were just willfully ignorant. At worst, they were completely complicit.
Okay, so now for some lessons learned and policy changes. So first, there were different policy changes like internationally and then also on the national level. But first, for the international, there was the OECD, which was, like Lotus said, it was the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, and they had a common reporting standard. And then the FATF, which is the Financial Action Task Force, and they had just various recommendations. A little bit more about them. For the OECD, it was introduced in 2014, which was 2 years before the actual leak. And then it was basically just a framework for automatic exchange of financial information between countries. And then with the leak, that accelerated the adoption. And in 2018, over 100 countries had fully implemented it. For the FATF, they emphasized the need for ownership transparency and customer due diligence. Basically just meant that they need to have like accurate and current information on the owners. And then also make that information available to authorities. And essentially all these recommendations were an attempt to deter shell companies from happening. Now for policy changes on the national level. So the United States, they passed the Corporate Transparency Act. UK established a public register of owners in 2016. And the European Union implemented a fifth anti-money laundering directive in the beginning of 2020. And now for lessons learned and like future outlook. So obviously the Panama Papers clearly showed like benefits to openness. Obviously, if you're more open, you're going to have more accountability and show greater transparency, especially if there's a strengthened regulatory system. There's also various risks to secrecy. So like the Panama Papers completely undermined like financial stability and then also limited public trust completely. And then looking to the future, it's clear that there needs to be like more transparency, especially through like robust frameworks, more cooperation, and then like empowering whistleblowers and investigative journalists. Like was mentioned earlier, many people like lost their lives from this, so it's really important to empower those people to continue to come forward in the future. And now we're gonna play some Jeopardy. So has everyone played Jeopardy before? Do you know how it works? Yeah. Okay. We're gonna break into two teams. So do you guys want to, in your group, and Dr. Bruns, do you want to join the soccer guys and Kirsten?
No, you are.
Do you guys want to keep score?
Alana.
Kirsten's fine.
All right.
So we have sit down. So it's about soccer.
Oh.
If you guys have a team name, let me know.
That's funny.
I was thinking about that, but I thought
Yeah.
you two was funnier.
Team football.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Hey, give me the blue thing. Here.
Okay, so usually in Jeopardy, you like buzz in, but we'll just take whichever team raises their hands first. We're like taking the.
Can we have a buzzer sound?
Oh.
Just smack your desk really hard.
All right.
Oh, Jeopardy. Okay.
Remember, answer in the form of a question.
Dylan.
Dang.
Let's do legality for 200.
Alright, nice. Wait, how'd you have to buzz just then?
The act of legally dragging politicians.
There we go. What was it, 200?
Let's see the, I guess there is that answer.
Just want to take again?
You got control of the board.
Mhm.
That's how Jeopardy works,
If you
right?
guys get the answer first on the next one.
Oh, we just get to choose. I see,
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, so you guys can still raise your hand.
Let's go legality for 400.
It's a
This
win.
type of partnership is formed between politicians and wealthy.
Oh.
Dylan, you buzzed.
I know we did. Thank
No.
you.
There's a time limit.
Yeah,
I
5
don't see
seconds.
the time limit.
We're still like-
3, 2, 1.
Big partnership.
Right under the wire.
Yeah, Dylan. Come in close.
Control of the board is yours.
Oh, let's go legality 600.
6.
Gonna run out.
Investment market is what foreign investors often park their assets.
REITs or real estate.
You guys can buzz in too, you know, don't let.
Legality 800. I'm cleaning up.
Mossack Fonseca knowingly helped launder over 10 million euro from this British robbery.
It was on the slides. Yeah.
But like.
It was on the slide.
You know about it?
I forgot to mention it. But
I don't think you mentioned
It
it.
was on the slides. On the slides. Yeah, it's
What
no,
is Prince Harry?
nope. You guys have a chance to steal.
British banker, British bank.
Was a British bank, but we were
I can't remember. what's in
we
the
were
word.
looking for the Brinksmont robbery.
Oh,
Brinksmont.
so close.
Yeah,
Flower Car Company.
I believe control of the board is still yours.
I'm scared of the legality 1,000. Let's do offshore finances 200.
This civilization is recognized.
Dr. Barnes.
It's one little question.
What is Rome?
There you go.
Who is Rome?
Those are two.
Where is Rome?
Why the tower?
Okay.
Why is Rome?
The legality for 1,000.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Gotta make a comeback somehow.
Rioting occurred in this European country after the death of journalist.
Malta.
Dang it. I was-
Oh, not in the form of a question.
What is Malta? Where's Malta?
Control the board, back to you guys.
History of offshore finances for 400.
This small European country became popular for its political neutrality.
Switzerland.
Is it Switzerland or is
Yeah.
okay? I don't know, in Luxembourg.
I got it, don't worry about
Our comeback.
Let's do history of offshore finances for 600.
King Island is located in this tax havens jurisdiction.
it. I'm taking a guess. The Bahamas.
No,
Cayman Islands. What is
no. We were looking for the British Virgin Islands.
it?
Yeah,
It's the islands. That should be half.
yeah. Control still you guys.
Let's do history of offshore finances for 800.
This type of company provides corporate anonymity, tax neutrality, and streamlined incorporation process.
Just try it. There you go.
No.
Sid's answering for me.
Hey, Sydney, what do you got?
I don't remember what I said. I think tax shelter. No, that's not it.
That's incorrect. Chance to steal.
That word accent and I'm clueless.
Shell Corp's guy. The whole thing was about Shell Corporation.
Shelter.
Again, a half point.
Control still the Dylan.
Let's do history of offshore finances for 1,000.
Most organized game of Jeopardy ever.
Oh, Dr. Barnes.
OECD.
All right, that was history for 1,000.
Okay, we have the other.
Team soccer, board is yours.
Go.
Panama Papers for 800.
Oh my goodness.
We'll just go straight for the big one. Dr. Barnes.
Fonseca.
Oh,
You guys sent this to him before.
Lesson learned 800.
This organization created recommendations which emphasize the need for ownership.
What is FAFR?
Oh, what is the FATF?
Yeah.
You want to stand for?
Financial Action Task Force. We actually talked about it in fraud and forensics.
Yeah.
Talked about it.
Soccer.
Board is yours.
Lessons learned for 600.
This country passed Corporate Transparency Act in
Raising
2020.
your hand or what are you doing? Oh.
Can I guess?
Sure.
Was UK?
No.
No, you can't guess.
Not the chance to steal.
Los Estados Unidos.
Yep.
All of them.
Was it the United States?
I said no. I thought she said no.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Board is yours.
Let's do Panama Papers 600.
Panama 6.
Name 2 celebrities.
Emma Watson, Jackie Chan.
Form of a question.
Do those people.
Who name the other two? Who is Lionel Messi and
What is
Simon
They got it. They said something fast. All right,
that worked.
we'll split it 60. We'll split it. That's what it. That's what. I know. All right. You guys have control.
Rage. Okay.
Well, we didn't split it. You guys still got yours. They got nothing.
Do I have to pick?
Well, you're
Sure.
Pick anyone on here.
Oh. Big Boy 1,000. Panama Papers.
Panama Papers 1,000.
Name an island.
U.S. Virgin Islands. Or UK.
Oh, shit.
What was that? Final answer, please. Hey, but you still didn't form of a question. Chance to steal.
I said island.
You didn't know. You did. You just said Cayman Islands. I am Square Master here. Chance to steal. What is the Cayman Islands? There we go. That was 1,000.
You said like a business. You said every island on the planet. You said Australia.
All right. Control is board to you.
Lessons learned, policy changes 1,000.
1,000.
This organization created a common reporting standard that was introduced in 2014 and which introduced the automatic exchange for financial account information between countries.
Yes. OCED.
Form of a question, please.
What is OCED? What? There you go.
You said 40 gorillas and you said the U.S. first, which is wrong.
Let's do Panama Papers for 200.
The number of documents leaked in the Panama.
I was gonna say it was 2.6 terabytes.
Those are terabytes. We specifically also said the number of documents. How many documents?
Greater than 1.
Well-
What is greater than 1?
Sure,
That's the correct answer.
but it's also not in the form of a question. Chance to steal. Well, I didn't hear it, so it didn't count.
About 500,000.
No, 11.5 million.
Oh.
11.5 million.
Only 3 million off.
I'll give you 2 points. I am not giving you 2.
200. Lessons learned for 200.
Give that point.
I'm not giving up points.
fast favorites.
I'm not giving up. I like the name Team Cody American Soccer.
Lessons learned for 200.
Lessons learned 2.
Economic Union implemented a fifth anti-money laundering directive in 2020.
What is the European Union?
Let's do Panama Papers for 400, please.
Sure.
Publicly revealed.
What is 2016? Correct.
Last question.
2000. Shut up.
Double Jeopardy.
Oh, this is double jeopardy.
We wager our points?
Yeah, sure. How many you want to wager? All. That's good. All right, double jeopardy, final jeopardy, wager in all points. Lessons learned 400.
This created a public register of owners in 2016 and extended the requirement to foreign countries in 2018.
What in the world? What is the US?
No. Yeah.
UK. Great. Okay.
1,000 points. Really matter.
I'm making it more fair. You got like. I'm making it more interesting. Also, I think they won based off of them wagering on their points.
Anyway, where anything's made up and the points don't matter.
No, there's no final jeopardy. Congratulations, you are now done with the auditing course for the semester. Have fun.
Buddy.
Buddy, run by Dylan.
Good job, Team Dylan.
You are doing it's how you finish.
Added 2,000 points on there.
During the CPA exam during auditing section, you're just gonna raise your hand when you.
Yeah. Hopefully I get off to that hot of a start.
What's those in?
You and Leah both, yeah.
Eraser is just so bad.
Yeah, it's awful for a dry erase board.
Is that it right there? You know, just.
That's it. No more words. I'll have grades posted sometime next week. Thanks for a great semester. And I'll see you all for, most of you for graduation and some of you and the upcoming fall. So take care.
Thank you, Dr.